Session 3, the digital transformation of nonprofit accounting, hosted by Dean Dorton. Presenting today is Althea Sussman and Kaydee Ruppert. We will be covering more fabulous nonprofit accounting in this webinar. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the chat feature at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We will be monitoring it throughout the presentation, and we'll make sure to share any technical questions with our presenters at the end. We do not address your question during today's presentation. Contact information is included at the end of the materials, so please reach out after as needed. This session is for 1 hour of CPE credit. In order to get that full hour, there will be polling questions throughout the presentation. Please open a browser and go to pollev.com/Dean Dorton, POLLEV.com/Dean Dorton. Enter your first and last name in order to receive CPE credit. You can also text 22333 and enter the message Dean Dorton. That's one word, and then you can respond to each question that way. Your answers are still anonymous on screen, and you're not signing up for anything. You're just simply providing us a way to tie responses to your attendance for CPE credit. Each polling question has a 60-second time limit. This webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to you by the end of this week. Thanks so much for joining us today. Do not hesitate to ask questions. And without further ado, I give you Kaydee Ruppert.
Hi, everyone. So why don't we advance the screen, Julia, and we can see more pictures of the two of us. I think Kristen's actually doing the screen. I'm sorry. So I'm Kaydee Ruppert, and I have been working in nonprofits for my entire career. Most of that time has been actually in nonprofit settings. I've had many different leadership roles within many different kinds of nonprofits. But most recently, I've been working as more of an outsourced CFO, and I manage accounting teams that work remotely to assist nonprofit organizations with their needs. Joining me today is Althea Sussman, who is also exclusive to nonprofit. She comes at it, though, from the technology angle more so. And together, we both serve on the nonprofit industry team here at Dean Dorton, and hopefully we can bring some value to you today. So let's go on. So this is the third webinar in a series that we've been conducting, and we really haven't talked yet about Dean Dorton as a firm. So I just wanted to quickly touch base and let you know that we're a mid-sized firm. We operate largely in the southeast region of the country. But truly, we have clients all over the United States. I think this map is even maybe a little bit outdated as far as the states that we're active in. And then we actually even have a couple of international clients. So regardless of the business needs of your nonprofit, hopefully there's something that we can help you out with sometime along the way. So let's go on and actually talk about what we're going to talk about today. We're going to spend a little time talking about digital transformation as it stands today, both from more of a universal perspective, and we're going to try to spend some time making it personal for you. And then we'll talk about how to actually plug that in and what some other organizations have experienced along their digital transformation journey. And of course, we'll leave some time for questions. But if you have questions along the way, please, as Julia said, don't hesitate to use the chat. Or I think there's actually a little hands up feature maybe. I am not always digital savvy, so we'll see as we go. Let's move to the next screen then, Kristen. All right. This is not the screen that we want to be looking at. So while Kristen's fixing that, the screen that we're really supposed to be looking at is one that talks about some of the challenges that are facing nonprofit organizations today. So I'll start to address those things, and as we catch up on our resource here and later on, you should have those PDFs available to you. We can double back and take a look at how that fits in with the slide. Oh, I forgot about these. We've got polling questions. I apologize. So the first thing we want to do is take a little bit of a pulse of where we are with you so that we understand our audience a little bit better and have a good understanding of where you're at with your digital transformation. Assuming we can get our polling questions worked out. Kristen, if those are stuck, I'm happy to move on and go just straight into that first slide of material.
Just 1 second, and I apologize for the technical difficulty. Give us 1 second. Thank you.
So while we're waiting, maybe if anyone has a question right off the bat or something about digital transformation that they're hoping will be resolved today, if you wanted to include that in the chat, we could start chatting about it.
Kaydee, do you want to talk about KPIs at all, or do you want to move on to the next polling question?
Was that the first polling question, Julia, KPIs?
The first polling question was about where you are in your system, but we moved on to the second polling question.
Okay, so we're not seeing the second polling question? At least
Okay.
I'm not. I'm seeing a big gray screen. Althea, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, it's all blacked out, almost like it's not being shared.
Okay.
Like the
well,
screen.
then I will tell you. Then I will let you know. 17% people said that my system does it all. 17% of people said I export from my system, then manipulate and report in Excel. 33% of people said I don't have time to do this, and 33% what is a KPI?
Well, that sounds like a pretty diverse group, but I'm a little disappointed that so many people aren't familiar with KPIs. So KPI is a key performance indicator. And as we go through some of the needs that are really facing nonprofits today, identifying what your key performance indicators are can be really valuable in keeping and attracting donors, members, if you're a membership-based organization, really being able to tell the story of your nonprofit. And it also assists your board in recognizing how you're making progress towards the strategic initiatives that have been identified for maybe that year or that 3 or 5 year period that you've done strategic planning in relation to. What's our next polling question, Julia?
Give us 1 second. I apologize, everyone. Maybe we need to switch sharing, Julia. We're still not seeing anything on the slides.
Did you share your entire screen or just your PowerPoint presentation? That might be why. If you share your entire screen and then run the PowerPoint, you might see it all instead of that gray screen.
Let me try to get mine. Oh.
Yeah. Hey.
There we go. Awesome.
That's kind of exciting that we have some participants who are closing in less than a week. That's pretty good. Big trend in the financial world overall right now is not simultaneous, but ongoing close, where you really don't have a close, where your books are in real time as much as possible all the time. And that's kind of an exciting thing to be following to really get rid of some of those antiquated month-end processes that definitely better serve users if we can get that information in front of them on a faster basis. Okay, I'm guessing that probably about wraps that up. So this is, 1 to 2 weeks, I think really is probably the average. That's what I see more often than not. Is your accounting function adequate to meet your decision maker needs? Okay, looks like it's pretty positive for this group, so that's good. And I think there might be, all right, so that's the last one. Those questions were all aimed at just trying to give you all and us an understanding of who's in our audience and how digital transformation might be able to assist you in moving to the next stage of being able to meet your mission. So that's kind of where we are here within this little room that we're in right now, but let's see where we are as an industry overall. This is what I started speaking to a while ago. I apologize. So let's take a look at this slide. These are some of the challenges that are really facing the nonprofit industry right now as we see them. In today's environment, attracting and retaining good board members is more challenging than ever. There's really a lot of demands on everyone's time. And so it's really important to use that time wisely and to make sure that we're providing information in a format that's easy to understand for that individual and can be applied to the decisions they need to make in the moment they need to make them. So board members are a huge constituency of users of our financial information, and we want to make sure that that information is useful. But program managers and people that actually perform service delivery are also stretched pretty thin. And not only are they meeting the needs of the organization through service delivery, a lot of times they're being asked to step up and actually identify additional funding or ways to grow the organization. And having access to clear and concise data at their fingertips when they need it is really an effective tool towards keeping your nonprofit stable and positioning it well for growth. And lastly, we're in an environment right now where donors are really being tapped out. There are a lot of demands on donors for their resources and their time. And so we really need to be prepared when we make an ask so that we can sustain that donor into the future. Overall, it's just really important to be able to speak to each audience in the way that audience can best understand without the clutter and on the timeline that works best for them. Going to the second point there. Oh, sorry, Kristen, I overpaused. The second point there, in this hopefully post-pandemic world, we still are dealing with a lot of things related to the pandemic, but one of the things that's starting to get back on track is a renewed focus on security. When we were in the heart of it, we were really just doing what we needed to do to get things done, and we weren't as concerned about the dotting the I's and crossing the T's. But over the course of the last year, 18 months, there is a renewed focus again on good controls and data security. So with that said, though, we don't necessarily want to return to exactly where we were pre-pandemic. There are a lot of really great features that came out of the pandemic. I think that a lot of people have really seen the benefit of web-based meetings, the ability to electronically exchange data and information, not having so much downtime when you're really exercising the full advantages of your technology. So basically, at the end of the day, we're really hoping that through our digital transformation, we can keep the best of what we've realized during the pandemic and fix the rest. And so digital transformation gives us the opportunity to do that. We also, as part of that aftermath of the pandemic, we probably need to reconnect with a lot of our volunteer donors. So if someone's volunteering their time during COVID, the heart of COVID anyway, a lot of those volunteers became disenfranchised. And I think that there are a number of ways to re-engage them. And as we talk about the possibilities of technology and using both financial and non-financial data to tell the story of your organization, keeping in mind those volunteers of time as important donor base themselves will help us find ways to reach out and re-engage. When we talk about community needs, obviously post-pandemic, there's a lot, and there's also within the last many number of years, probably decades, more and more cultural issues that need to be identified and addressed within our communities. And government resources continue to be diverted and overextended. And even though there's resources that have been put into the economy through COVID actions on the part of Congress, there's a lot of administration that goes along with that. And more nonprofits are filling that gap in our communities. It's the nonprofits that are stepping up and taking on the role of service delivery to provide the safety net to individuals, resources to families, and even in some cases to be a real collaborative partner with the businesses in our community to fill needs that didn't previously exist or that existed and are just being exacerbated right now. So it's essential that your nonprofit is well defined. There are more nonprofits than ever too. I was going to mention that post-pandemic, there was a flurry of registration for nonprofit organizations. I think in a lot of ways, it put a magnifying glass on the needs in our community. And a number of well-intentioned individuals not realizing that there were already a number of nonprofits focused on those very problems, stepped up and formed their own nonprofits, which is great. The more hands, the merrier. But it underscores the importance of each nonprofit having a voice and you being able to really provide clarity to what you do and what makes you different. And then finding ways to collaborate with one another to really accomplish the missions that you share. So having well-defined and visible financial data and non-financial data is going to allow you to really effectively honor your mission. And then lastly, the last point here as far as challenges, I don't think any of us believes that the cost of living is going to be going down anytime soon. Nonprofits have always had to really stretch that dollar to be a competitive employer, and that is more visible now than ever before. So it's really important that if you do not currently have a well-versed mechanism for measuring your return on investment in your people power, that'd be good homework, something to work on. Because being able to articulate that part of your story really goes a long way in your ability to secure future resources. So that's just something that I would encourage as we move into digital transformation that you keep in mind. Being able to measure the amount of money that you're investing in human resources. What's the payback on that? And it's not necessarily financial. Financial is important, but more important is how does it move the needle on your accomplishment of your mission? So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so to effectively meet the challenges that we just talked about, accounting functions really need to move from the old static paradigm to a new dynamic paradigm. And I want to go through some of the elements that distinguish one from the other. And some of you may be on this journey of paradigm shift. I think many of you probably are. But I think it's still valuable to come back to basics and determine why we're on that journey, and maybe identify parts of the journey that could use a little tweaking. So let's get started on seeing what's different. Obviously, a static accounting system is one that relies a lot on manual processes. Generally, you've got an office. You've maybe got one accountant or an accounting team. They have keys to their office. There's a number of tools that are locked or that only certain people have access to. In a dynamic environment, we try to automate tasks as much as possible. And that allows you to engage more people in the process. You can plug in individuals where their skill sets really shine, and you don't necessarily need that set of keys to get into the room. You don't have to be physically located there, but it allows you to really focus your time on what you're good at and let the system do the things that don't require a lot of analysis along the way. In a static environment, the technology is in that one physical location that I just mentioned, and you have to be there and there has to be access. And I think we learned through the pandemic that sometimes that presents a real difficulty. Utilizing a cloud-based system, though, allows for decentralized work. Again, you can plug in the parties that are best able to accomplish the different sections of a task. And you don't have to be as concerned about who's available and what hours are available and the things that come along with operating and maintaining a physical office. Using a cloud-based system in combination with a physical office too is a great alternative and offers a lot of benefits of both worlds. I think that's a direction that we see many, many people going in right now. A feature of a dynamic accounting function, another feature of a dynamic accounting function is really that third-party partners. And what we mean by that is the use of subject matter experts. So these are individuals who have really delved deep into certain aspects of the accounting process, or that are, not even necessarily the accounting process, but parts of your business process, and it just makes sense. They can do it more effectively, more efficiently to engage them. A good example of this has always been payroll providers. So you might outsource payroll providing, the payroll process, and that might be a permanent thing that you engage a subject matter expert in. But there's also things that are more project-based. Maybe you're having an event, and instead of trying to redirect the workload of the people on your team, you could actually engage an external fundraising team or event planning team to assist with that particular event. And those are great examples of bringing in third-party partners. I wanted to touch base earlier on the importance of reports, and those next 2 points, the real-time data on demand and dynamic reports, really speaks to, again, giving your stakeholders, and that might be your board or your donors, your project managers, giving them what they need when they need it so that they can really hit the ground running and be most efficient. In the old static paradigm, when you're relying on canned reports coming out of your system, generally there was some exporting, there's some shenanigans that have to be applied before you can really use that data in a really effective way. Moving to more of a dynamic accounting function takes that lag time out and gives people what they need in a much more realistic time frame. A byproduct of automation is the opportunity to engage electronic workflows. And the big advantage of electronic workflows is just the elimination of the opportunity for error. Whenever you're not keying something in, you eliminate some of the opportunity for error. And not only do auditors love that, when you have an electronic workflow, they know what their checks and balances are. It saves a lot of time that way, but it also just relieves a lot of the stress that your employees deal with on a day-to-day basis. And lastly, the digital office is one where you really have your supporting documentation right there, visible to you, side by side with your transaction. So an example that I use here, under the static paradigm, when you were looking at those financial statements and you have a question about postage, you'd have to track down the person who holds the little key to the filing desk. Then once you're in the filing desk, or the filing cabinet, you would have to make a decision about whether the UPS store is under U for UPS, or T for the, or maybe P for postage. And then within that, you might have to decide, is this the fiscal year expense or a calendar, or is it filed on a calendar year, alphabetical by date, a number of questions. And by the time you actually find the supporting documentation that makes up that postage expense, you probably just don't even care anymore. Dynamic system, on the other hand, ideally will store that supporting documentation side by side with your transaction. So as you're reviewing your financial statement online, you can click on that postage expense and hopefully within a few keystrokes be able to see who approved that transaction, when it occurred, who it was written to, and why, because hopefully that documentation is all easily attached. So we're looking at this screen here and this doesn't happen overnight, but over a good period of time, I think we're all thinking about moving from that static accounting function to a dynamic one. And I'm very curious about what might make you nervous about that. Is there anything on this slide that makes you uncomfortable? I'm hoping that you can include that in the chat. Or do you have any examples or stories about your journey between static and dynamic where maybe something went awry? We love cautionary tales. Right, Althea?
Yes.
See if we've got anything there.
We do not have anything in the chat, and we would love for and encourage interaction for asking questions, or if you have any examples. Okay, Beverly Jones. She said it's time to convert and / set up.
Maybe the time it takes to convert.
Yes, time to convert, yeah.
Yeah, that makes us all uncomfortable. And Althea can probably speak best to the time it takes to convert. And I think she will in the later part of our presentation, but really putting some thought on the front end to what you're hoping to get out of your system on the back end, I find is always a great place to start. Althea, did you have something to add there?
No, it depends, what is it that you're converting? Is it everything? You're going to a whole new accounting system. You just want to, turn on workflows and you're already in a cloud-based accounting system, then that's not so daunting. But we have plans for, each thing that you might want to shift to, and we can help with any of that.
I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see frequently is, you're usually in a hurry when you're trying to make a shift between being static and dynamic, even if it's a small thing. And you're thinking about it only from the aspect of how do I duplicate this identically with less effort? How do I automate it? But it's really a great opportunity to step back and say, I liked what I had before, but can I get a result that's even better. So it's not only looking at trying to take the processes you currently have and make them more efficient, but how can you take the processes you currently have and really make them more effective, so that the things that you're doing are really adding value and not just moving stuff around. Okay. Well, if there's no other comments, then I think, Kristen, we can probably move to the next screen. And if you thought you weren't going to get engaged, now you will. Hopefully. I'm going to go a little low tech on you and ask that you grab a piece of scratch paper, although I think you could probably pull up an Excel if you wanted to do it that way also. We're going to need 3 columns on your piece of scratch paper or your worksheet, yellow, green, and blue. And then as we go through the next couple of slides and I talk about some of these items that are listed here on the left, we're going to be asking you to put a hash mark under the column that's most appropriate for your organization. And then at the end, we'll tally those hash marks and talk about the results. So let's get started. The first 2 slides are going to be really focused on your accounting team or your bookkeeping team, and that might be a team of 1 or many. And the first item that we want you to record a hash mark for has to do with the size of that team. And obviously, if it's a small team, 0 to 3, you put your hash mark under yellow, 4 to 6 green, and then 7 or more blue. So pretty self-explanatory. Technical accounting skills. This is meant to be things that are relevant to your organization. So, you know, having a master's degree in tax is a fantastic thing, but it might not be any value to your organization to have your accounting team all have master's degree in taxation. So think about the relevance to your organization, and then think about, do they have a good understanding of the principles that apply to things like revenue recognition or cost allocation? Are they familiar with accruing expenses and they're comfortable with accruing expenses? Do they understand the documentation that's required for donations? If you're grant funded, do they understand the exceptions and the rules that go along with your particular type of grant funding? Those are the types of things that I mean when in this row here when we talk about technical accounting skills. And really, you know, are they familiar with what keeps you tax exempt so that your organization isn't at risk? So go ahead and put a hash mark under the column that's most appropriate. Most of these, yellow is low, and then obviously for the rest of this screen, it moves to high and blue. So think about whether your team has low knowledge in that area or high knowledge, high competency. Technology is pretty self-explanatory there. Both current technology that's being used by your organization and having that awareness of emerging technology and eagerness to pursue it or to think about it or to see if it fits. We'd be looking for input on that. Then the best business practices, think about changes in insurance, banking, human resources. So even if you outsource human resources and payroll, you still need to have someone on your team that can advocate for that, understands the basics of those rules. So thinking about those types of things. And then internal controls is, we know it's challenging if you fell into the yellow area earlier and you have 0 to 3, but does your team know how to compensate and mitigate risk even if they are a small organization? They might be very skilled at that despite being a small organization. So think about how internal controls are handled for you. I'll give you just a second to finish up that page's hash marks. And then Kristen, if we want to go to the next page, I think that would be great. Okay. So the first item on the list is that ability to meet reporting deadlines. So this isn't just your board or your grants, but internally, how frequently do you go to your accounting or bookkeeping team and get the information that you need when you need it? So how timely is that? How capable are they at being able to do that? Or are they limited in that ability right now? That next item speaks to whether or not the information really zeroes in on what that user needs. So is there a lot of clutter in your accounting system? Do you have to export that into Excel and do a bunch of shenanigans in order to get an answer to the question or a report that would actually answer the question? If you do, then you'd be on the lower end of that response. And then finally, in the area of reporting, it's common, is it common that you have a lot of mistakes in your report and you have to reissue them? If the report just doesn't look very polished, especially thinking about your donor base or your grants, that might be a reason to list this as a low item. Really just basically, do your reports instill confidence in the users? So moving on then to that next one, does your team have the capacity to be nimble? And sometimes this has to do with size, but sometimes it has to do with other things as well. Do they have the ability to refresh and take leave in reasonable ways? Do they have that ability to manage emergencies and, be able to tackle new opportunities, honestly, not just the negative, but the positive? The next item, let's see what that is there. Yeah, the ability to translate your financial data. So this one speaks to how well does your team tell the story? So a lot of times we get so focused on getting those numbers in the right slot and reporting on the past that we might not have the skill set on our team to really tell the story about what those numbers can do for us going forward. So that's something we want you to rank here as part of your profile for digital transformation. I always want to say transportation. And then how effective is your team at, well, that's the same thing. How effective is your team at helping non-financial people really understand the financial story? And then lastly, in relation to the accounting and bookkeeping team, how are they able to just be bookkeeping accounting specialists, or are they really spread over the organization in a number of different responsibilities? So do your team members also have to answer the phone and handle intakes of your client base, or I don't know, make coffee, write letters? A lot of times administrative responsibilities also fall to the accounting team, but they may have very project-based responsibilities. I mentioned events before. Are these the individuals that get involved in preparing events, managing fundraisers, identifying donors, those types of things? So let's get those hash marks done, and then we'll go to the last page for hash marking. And now I want you to take off your accounting bookkeeping team hat and think about your senior leadership team. Now, this might just be one individual, but more often than not, it's a small group of leaders within your organization that are really focused on operations and implementing your strategy over time. And they're the decision makers in your organization. So with that group in mind, how comfortable are they with technology? And then what's their communication style? And by that, do they plan well when they need something from the accounting team, or are they always operating on the seat of their pants? Fire drill mode is that last option there in the blue. Does your leadership team tend to prefer to pursue their concerns as they come up? So do they expect the accounting team when they have a question to basically pivot and manage that concern or question, or are they okay holding on to concerns until designated meeting times and the opportunity to really handle things in more of a batch kind of manner? Two different styles. Neither is better. Just where does your leadership team fall on the spectrum? And then in our COVID world now, we definitely have better insight into how comfortable people are with remote interactions. So hopefully you can gauge that pretty easily. Financial data oftentimes comes with assumptions because documentation that's needed isn't always available when we'd like it. So as your leadership, does your leadership team, and maybe you're part of that leadership team, how comfortable is that team with estimates, good estimates that are based on historical actuals or a good reference point? How comfortable is the team with that process of putting out financial data with estimates? Or would they rather wait and see the financial data when it's been, all the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed? So just think about that comfort level. And then process is pretty self-explanatory. Some visionaries really struggle with structure and others thrive in it. So I'm going to give you a second to add up your hash marks and find out what color you are. There are 18 total hash marks, so you can give you an idea of whether you have a preponderance in one color or another. And then we are going to do a poll to get a sense of the room and where everyone is on their digital transformation journey. Okay, I think it's settled down pretty well. And we have a preponderance of green, so no yellows. Before we actually look at this slide, I would love it if you just throw in the chat how you feel your results match up to your reality. When you think about that, well, maybe we should look at the next slide first in order to look at what each of those colors actually means, and then we can see how close it matches up to reality. So we didn't have anyone fall into yellow, but this is the experience Dean Dorton has had. When we get those types of responses, we really have classified that group as being lean and really mission focused. And this is a group that really could probably benefit from bringing in more subject matter experts and using their resources to really focus on their mission. They're probably at the beginning of digital transformation and the amount of effort it takes to bring those systems up to speed. The resources financially and the human resources that it takes are probably not the best use of their resources at this time. Better to partner with someone who can really make that much more efficient for them. But we had a lot of people fall into that. We had a lot of you fall into that green section that we call emerging and advancing your mission. So in this section, you're well on your way, but you probably do have some barriers in your process, or maybe some people who are not quite on board yet with digital transformation. So there's a lot of opportunities here. And what we recommend for the emerging and advancing your mission group is the consideration of an external formal assessment of where you're at with your technology. What we find here a lot is that there's an excitement about technology, and you probably have a lot of different pieces, but there isn't a uniform excitement about the process by which you use those pieces. So a lot of times we see them operating in silos and not necessarily exchanging information the best possible way. In some cases, they're creating frustration for employees that could otherwise be really productive. So having somebody step back and look at that big picture and give you some recommendations on how to connect the dots is sometimes a really great use of your resources in order to be able to get everything rowing in the same direction. And then lastly, we call that mature and mission driven. So you're in good shape moving towards digital transformation. And what's important here is to make sure that you codify or adopt a process by which you're going to continually improve. So you don't want to rest on your laurels. You want to recognize what's great about your use of technology now and the skill sets that your people bring in collaboration with technology. But give consideration to how do you keep that relevant and vital in the years to come to make sure that you don't lose that advantage that you currently have. So now let's throw in the chat how well you think your results really lined up with your reality of where you're at in your digital transformation profile. See if anybody felt like it was out of whack. Obviously, this isn't a scientific type poll, so the better the feedback of whether or not we really get to results that make sense and seem to align with reality, that's useful for us in assisting other nonprofit organizations in their journey. Kristen, should we throw in some incentive?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Let's say the first two people to respond in the chat with their color, and if they agree or disagree, I will send them a Starbucks gift card.
Fantastic. It's not tempting enough, Kristen.
I know.
Well, we can probably leave that open and move on in our digital transformation journey here. And I'm going to turn it over to Althea now. So we've learned about some of the different challenges we're trying to resolve, and you hopefully have a better handle or a different perspective on where you're at in your journey towards meeting those challenges. Althea's got some ideas on how we can put that into practice in a real practical way.
Next slide, please. There we go. Thank you, Katie, and good afternoon, everyone. As we all know, especially with the events of the past couple of years, digital transformation is now imperative. Oh, you could go back one slide. Thank you. Go back to there you go. Organizations have needed to be prepared efficiently and effectively to harness new technologies, as well as prioritize digital transformation, which has meant adapting to new ways of working. Next, please. Decentralizing modern software tools, like Katie mentioned a moment ago, allows you the ability to store and access your data in the cloud. Gone are the days of relying on your copies of source documentation in the filing cabinet or relying on your coworker down the hall. And this is especially beneficial for accounting. Using cloud-based accounting software allows you access to real-time data anytime, anywhere, that can give you current financial snapshots of your organization whenever you need it. With migrating to the cloud, you can use specialized applications that allow you to integrate your software needs, developing a dynamic digital infrastructure that keeps driving value for your organization. You can streamline efficiencies with customized workflows. A cloud-based platform allows you to customize designs of your tech stack or system to bring flexibility and automation to your organization. And this flexibility also allows you to more easily outsource or co-source if needed, while still having the real-time visibility and control of your financial details. A nonprofit executive typically has a passion for a charitable cause, but probably not preferring to manage their accounting department. So whether your organization needs to expand accounting services beyond basic bookkeeping or hire a complete accounting department, outsourced and co-sourced accounting offers scalable service options that provide efficiencies and peace of mind with your system and organization. Next slide, please. We know that better insight allows for better decision-making, so you know whatever accounting system you use needs to be efficient while delivering timely and accurate information. You need real-time data and access to that data anytime from anywhere in order to make timely business decisions. So a bird's eye view like a dashboard provides gives you visibility into relevant metrics and those key performance indicators that will allow you to keep your focus on the financial health of your organization. Customized reports with dimensional structure, preferably tailored to your type of organization, that have drill down capability to your source documents or comparative data will be beneficial for clear analysis, forecasting, and budgeting. Next slide, please. In order to get this level of outcome-focused accounting function, you really need cloud-based accounting tools. The modern true cloud solution has open APIs that provide connectivity, visibility, and efficiency through the modern technology of analytics, robotic process automation, and artificial intelligence. Basically, this allows you to do more with less. All these tools you see listed here are great options that allow for automated processes, which save you time and reduce human error. And at the end of the day, it saves your organization money. Let's look at an example. Next slide, please. Since we believe good accounting starts with a great system, here at Dean Dorton, we partner with Sage Intacct. Sage Intacct specializes in delivering real-time visibility into the metrics that matter to further your mission. They bring a robust infrastructure while at the same time keep it simple with a very user-friendly interface. It allows you to easily enter your accounting transactions that will be accessible to you anytime, anywhere, on any computer or device. It allows you to not only get an accurate current financial snapshot of your organization, but also makes it easy to share data and integrate with other solutions to further automate, such as a vendor payment tool. All the green lines you see here are the manual processes that are going on within your team or behind the scenes with your software. You can utilize cloud-based tools to manage all of this yourselves, or you can automate and allow external experts to manage this for you through outsourced or co-sourced accounting. Next slide, please. Your accounts payable department today could have some of the bottlenecks listed here on the left. Having many resources doing data entry and passing around paperwork in order to obtain approvals, not having insight into credit card spending until well after the bill is received, and relying on manual processes and workarounds to get the data you need from and into your current system. With Sage Intacct, your resources can concentrate more on monitoring and analyzing accounts payable and expenditures. Approvals can be done electronically from any device in real time. Credit cards can be linked to feed into your accounting system and be coded immediately to the program or division of your organization to help reflect a true current financial position. There are numerous applications that were made to integrate seamlessly to a cloud-based accounting software, such as Bill.com for AP bills and payments, Expensify and Nexonia for employee expenses and mileage, and many more to list. I'd like to take time now to ask what pain points you currently have with AP and employee expenses. You can also enter this into the chat or raise your hand if you'd rather speak about it. And we'd also like to hear any pain points you might have in regards to AR and allocations, which we'll be covering in the next slides. So you can put these into the chat at any time, and we will address these at that question segment at the end of our presentation. Next slide. On the revenue side, we have the accounts receivable group, which may be collecting association or membership fees, grant monies, or donations. You may now need to have a separate GL account to track reimbursable expenses and have a workaround outside of your accounting system to manually gather and create invoices. And the detail to back those invoices may be in many different systems. You may also need to track revenue deferrals. With Sage Intacct, there's a flag that can be checked for billable status, and you can tag any transaction with a grant or a program division, so your chart of accounts can remain a manageable size. You can generate invoices inside of your accounting system, and all of the supporting detail is readily available in your general ledger. And supporting documents like copy of AP bills can be automatically attached with the invoice when emailed to the funder or member. Next slide, please. If you're currently allocating revenue or expenditures manually, you already know that this can be a very cumbersome process. You can see some of the issues listed here, from not being a part of your accounting system and a heavy lift to update if you have data changes, plus trying to locate historical calculations after making changes to the spreadsheet formulas, and this can lead to data errors. Sage Intacct has tools available from transactional allocations that calculate on the transaction when entered, to dynamic allocations for month-end processing to allocate things such as fringe, admin costs, and those can be based on other costs, revenues, headcount, square footage, and so on. And a process for restriction release if you're tracking grants. Next slide. Again, the embracing of digital transformation, whether it be through the use of technology tools or coupled with outsourced accounting services, allows you to leverage the power of cloud technology to ensure your mission's success through steering process and organization performance, while increasing the number of cloud applications and digital technologies that we just discussed. It provides cost efficiencies through automation and access to industry experts. One of the biggest benefits of outsourced accounting is access to accounting and business technology experts that assure the best practices and accounting standards. Outsourcing allows organizations to eliminate the time and expense associated with recruiting, training, and managing additional accounting staff, as well as reducing the risk and cost of turnover. And again, it allows you the flexibility to build services and a platform to meet your specific organizational needs, anything from clerical, controller, or CFO consulting. Next slide. An example of utilizing this leverage is visualized here. It takes the very busy image you saw a moment ago with the green arrows of manual processes to the simplified version of your accounting function. With full access to your data without the busyness, you can have real-time data, quick access to dashboards and key performance indicators, while giving you easy-to-read custom reports that will meet the needs of your organizational roles. Next slide, please. Hopefully this has helped you to consider moving away from a desktop accounting solution. Updating to a cloud-based accounting system can be likened to the trend of how these days most people have a smartphone with many tools that they use to boost their connectivity and productivity. At a minimum, a modern accounting system should automate and streamline your core financial management functions, such as accounts receivable, accounts payable, and month-end close like you've seen here today. A cloud-based infrastructure provides the needed collaborative two-way interface for your tools to sync. It pulls together your information in real time to deliver that value-focused accounting functionality that we've mentioned.
So we're at time. Kristen, I'm going to have you hold off on that because I do want to make sure that we can address any questions. We wanted to share a success story with you all of a nonprofit organization that had previously been in that static accounting function type of a place in their organization where they had a lot of clunky accounts, and they moved to the Sage Intacct product as part of their digital transformation. But I think maybe we're best served by including that video as part of the attachment that we send back out to all of you, and use this last minute of our time together just to make sure that we can address any questions that may have come up. Kristen, did we have any questions in the chat that anyone needed to have addressed?
No, we don't have any questions at the moment.
Did we want to try to, I don't know how long that video is.
I think it's a good 2 or 3 minutes long. I think that it'd be great if we play it. If you feel like you need to drop off, I'm sure there's a number of individuals with busy schedules who need to get on with their day. But if we don't have any questions, I think, Kristen, maybe we could go back and hit play. And thank you all for your time today.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, it looks like we're having some issues with the volume, but what we can do is we'll go ahead and just send out the follow-up email, and we will include the link to the video so you can go back and watch it if you would like. Kaydee, I don't know if you want to jump in really quick right here.
Yeah, and for those that are still with us, we do have a fourth in this Mission Savvy series. Our next webinar is really going to be more of a Q&A with some real life CFOs. We're going to try to explore some of their behind the scenes challenges and how they resolve them in a technical environment. So we would appreciate it and look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.